Now, RT UK has established itself as a popular foreign news channel since it was started 2 years ago. All right, we can now go live to Afshin Rattansi, who is the host of Going Underground, based in London. Afshin, thanks so much for joining us. Well, what an unexpected day for RT, for all of us. What did you make of what happened?
I got to tell you, I only learned about this while watching the latest film by Oliver Stone about Edward Snowden. We were in a private screening room that he'd set up, and suddenly this message came across that the bank accounts had been frozen. It was almost like something from an Oliver Stone film. It is obviously completely outrageous that a UK government part-owned bank should freeze the accounts of a broadcaster. It shouldn't need reiterating, but the RT UK bureau here in London, the Kremlin does not call journalists to tell them what to say. No journalist in this office would ever say anything different. I suppose mainstream media would say, because we are forced to. The difference between the BBC, where I used to work, is that the BBC, their journalists are fired. The Director General was fired over Iraq. And then mainstream media shuffles their staff around and it gets back to the government narrative line. RT UK is not broadcasting information and journalism that fits in with the dominant narratives that the British government wants to broadcast to Britain and around the world. And so it's a very dangerous step to use banking practices in this way to obviously stifle freedom of speech in a country which has no written constitution.
Well, you know, Afshin, what's interesting at this point is, of course, we don't know very much because the bank wasn't forthcoming and didn't give any explanations. As you know already, that the tone of the message was quite categoric, and it said that this decision is not subject to revision. So, of course, you know, there are a lot of legal questions being raised at this point. But looking at the bank, it's a National Westminster Bank in the UK. The organization that has cut off our accounts is owned by the Royal Bank of Scotland, who in turn receives significant support from the UK government. So is it possible at all that this decision came from above? It was somehow politically motivated, or what do you think?
We can get no confirmation or denial from the Treasury. The Guardian reporting that they tried to get some answers. The Guardian newspaper in here in Britain, they couldn't get any answers. Not to center stage, I got to tell you, in the past few days, all my bank accounts were frozen. And luckily, my bank said to me, this was on the orders of the security services, but you'll get £50, about $75 refund for your inconvenience of having to have all your accounts changed. Something is obviously going on. I mean, all this news happens on the same day that, of course, Julian Assange, under arbitrary detention, according to the United Nations here in London by the British government, is claiming that his internet service was stopped. The British government are involved in a highly complex and, they hope, sophisticated attempt at trying to shut down debate in this country. They've done it before. Usually it's, I mean, the most famous cases have been indeed at the dominant broadcaster, the state-mandated British Broadcasting Corporation, where, as I say, two director generals have bitten the dust because they oppose the government. One of them, Alistair Milne, his son is now Jeremy Corbyn's spin doctor, press secretary. And I got to say, I am hoping that there are going to be British politicians who've certainly been given a voice on RT that were never given a voice by mainstream media. Jeremy Corbyn, for instance. I hope they and other lawmakers in the British Parliament will come to the defense of RT UK and say that freedom of speech is an inalienable right. I mean, it's
well, certainly, RT has
Magna
provided, just another source of information to a lot of viewers in the UK and to the world, for that matter. Well, Afshin, and I'd like to just let you know and our viewers that we have also been joined by one more guest on our program, and that's Martin McCauley, author and a Russia analyst. So I'll be talking to both of you, and I'd like now to turn to Mr. McCauley. Martin, thanks so much for joining us here on RT International. So what do you make of Natwest's decision to block RT's accounts?
Very, very strange indeed, because I've got an account with Natwest and I hope they're not going to block my account. There must be a reason behind it, and if they'd done it on a blanket scale, then it may be a decision which was taken out of Natwest's hands. There was an authority above Natwest. There is the Banking Association. There is banking is in fact licensed. Every bank has a license, and therefore it's subject to certain rules and so on. And it is possible that they, in fact, have infringed. Natwest has infringed these rules, and therefore they said that the RT accounts in Natwest, in fact, infringe our rules, and therefore you should close them down. And I would guess that it's not a Natwest decision on its own. It wouldn't suddenly do that, because the only reason why they'd close down an account is because you'd be involved in illegal trading or money laundering or something like that. Because as you know, they are very, very strict. And you can't really take a lot of money out of Natwest, or put a lot of money. You can't put a lot of money, a lot of cash into Natwest without asking a lot of questions. They ask a lot of questions. So
well, certainly, yes,
that there is something going on.
Well, in this particular case, I mean, what is also quite surprising is that there was no notice. So is this a normal procedure? Is this an exception, or what do you think it is, Martin?
No, I would expect that if they were going to close down my account, they would give me notice. They wouldn't suddenly close it down and then say it's a fait accompli. And it would allow me to come back and say, why are you closing down this account? Because it's been operating for several years, and all the money going in and money coming out is in fact legitimate. I'm not involved in money laundering. I'm not involved in any criminal activities and so on. This money is legitimate. So why are you closing it down? So I would expect them to give notice and then allow me to counter if there's any charges made against me, to be able to answer those charges and say, in my defense, I put the following forward. But it would appear in this case, they just closed the RT accounts down and said, we're not going to talk. We're not going to give any reasons.
Well, certainly, as you said, Martin, yeah.
It's very strange indeed.
Yes, and it raises a lot of questions at this point. You know, just picking up on what you said earlier about possible reasons why a bank account could be closed of a person or organization if there is some irregularities or financial complexities. But just citing our editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonian here, she said today that they, meaning the bank, didn't give us any reasons. And I think because there's nothing to give, we had absolutely transparent financing. We never had any kind of pretension. So this is what she said. And she also added that our lawyers are looking for all possible ways of resolving the situation. And we're trying to understand what it means exactly and whether we can work in the UK at all, or it's just this bank that is the problem. So basically, this is what we have at this point. Again, lots of questions and lots of unanswered questions, I should say. Well, Martin, I'd like you to stay with us as I'd like to turn to Afshin Rattansi, the host of Going Underground in London. Afshin, you're a journalist and you've been working on your program for quite some time. So tell us what it's been like for you working in the UK as a journalist, and especially being employed by RT London.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I help making programs here, but unlike other RT bureaus, we are subject to British regulation by the official government-sanctioned regulator Ofcom, and they are the arbiters of what goes out and what doesn't go out on British television. So it's interesting that here we have a bank seemingly trying to shut down media by shutting down bank accounts. It raises important questions about who really regulates the media in Britain, because hopefully there'll be a statement from Ofcom saying it's their job to regulate British media, not partly owned British government banks. If it does turn out to be the Treasury, as implied by the latest Guardian news that we've been hearing this morning, it really does go to the heart of what it means to be a free person in a free country. And as I said, this year is the anniversary of the Magna Carta, 1,000 years since, I think it's 1,000 years. So it raises important issues. Of course, RT journalists are regularly insulted and